So real quick, I just want to give a reminder to please subscribe so we can hit 500 subscribers pretty soon. But last weekend was DC Fandome, where DC revealed the first footage for some of their upcoming films, and also some of their first concrete information for ones that don't even have footage yet. We had a second trailer for Wonder Woman 1984, we had the first trailer for The Batman, a behind the scenes featurette for the Suicide Squad, a serious info dump for Black Adam, the first full trailer for the Snyder Cut version of Justice League, the title reveal for Shazam 2, and then some tiny drops of information for both The Flash and Aquaman 2, although those ones are a little bit debatable because there really wasn't much info for those. But overall, this was the first time in a long while that internet focus and hype was on DC rather than what Marvel has coming, and it really got me thinking, what company has the more exciting or interesting lineup of films? In comparison to this weekend, just over a year ago at San Diego Comic-Con, Marvel revealed their Phase 4 of movies. And some of these are also part of Phase 5, but the movies they revealed were Black Widow, The Eternals, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Spider-Man 4, Thor Love and Thunder, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Black Panther 2, Captain Marvel 2, Blade, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Ant-Man and the Wasp 3, and we know that they still very much plan on giving us a Deadpool film at some point, as well as that they also confirmed that Fantastic Four and X-Men are coming down the line as well. So that is a huge list of films, and in comparison, here is DC's. So they have Wonder Woman 1984, The Suicide Squad, The Batman, Black Adam, Justice League the Snyder Cut, Aquaman 2, Shazam Fury of the Gods, The Flash, and I'm gonna include The Trench here as well because James Wan is still pretty keen that that movie is getting made. Now if you visit the DCEU Wikipedia page, you'll see like 24 upcoming movies listed, but almost all of those are definitely not getting made, because DC is terrible at announcing movies and not actually making them. So at the moment I'm only counting the movies mentioned as the ones in DC's upcoming lineup, because to date, I think that the only time Marvel announced a movie that didn't actually get made was Inhumans, and even that ended up being a TV show. So anytime Marvel announces a movie, it's pretty much a given that it's going to be made. DC, on the other hand, is very different in that respect. But yeah, obviously, who you prefer, which lineup you find more exciting is completely subjective. There's no two ways about it. Every single person is going to feel differently on these lists, and it definitely depends on just which characters you like more or which ones you were excited to see in films. Out of these lists though, Marvel is definitely the one with the more diverse and I guess unknown lineup in terms of characters. There's no Iron Man or Captain America or Avengers films headlining them anymore. And to me, their lineup feels like one that is either going to blow people away, or it honestly could be their most unsteady one since Phase 1. DC, on the other hand, is still very clearly building up their properties, and this means that even though the styles for these movies look to be unique and widely different, you still know most of these characters. Everyone knows who Batman is, we've had 6 seasons of a very popular Flash TV show to build up his character, Wonder Woman was one of the more popular comic book films for the last 5 years, Aquaman's solo movie made a lot as well, Shazam 2 is also one of the best comic book films of the last 5 years in my opinion, The Suicide Squad, The Trench and Black Adam are kind of the only ones I think people aren't too knowledgeable on, but that said, they're also the ones that have the biggest chance to flop. So to talk about some of these movies themselves, I honestly think the only ones from DC's lineup that I'm not that excited for are both very connected to each other, and that's Aquaman 2 and The Trench. I didn't like a whole lot from the first Aquaman film honestly, like Jason Momoa is an awesome actor, but to me his take on the character isn't very great. The only thing I felt really stood out from the film were the visuals. As far as story and characters go, I just couldn't find myself being interested, and it unfortunately looks like the sequel won't be any different. The Trench is basically just going to be the Atlantis part of Aquaman, but without the Aquaman part. They'll be focusing on the creatures themselves and showcasing all that stuff, which just personally doesn't interest me all that much. As far as DC's other stuff goes, The Flash looks to be awesome, connecting to DC's multiverse with hints that we'll see connected to the Arrowverse too, and also even more characters alongside Affleck and Keaton's Batman. Plus, a solo Flash movie is something I've wanted for forever. This movie though has changed 1,001 times since it was announced, so I'm not holding my breath that it actually will be what it's getting teased to be. In all of DC's upcoming lineup, I still think there's a good chance that this film will be the one that changes the most before it actually comes out, and that it might not even include the Batman, or it won't even come out anytime soon. But the amount of teases it's getting lately is far more than usual, and that's what's filling me with hope that this is actually going to be what it's claiming to be. Wonder Woman 84 also looks awesome. I'm very excited to see Maxwell Lord and Cheetah, and the 80s theme is great too. The Batman trailer also completely blindsided me, because while I was definitely going to see it, I wasn't too hyped about yet another Batman movie, but that trailer really did push it very high up on my most anticipated list. Pretty much everything about it seems so interesting to me. I love how the costume is resembling the Arkham suit, I love how Pattinson seems to be really getting into the psyche of Bruce Wayne, and how at his core, he's an extremely damaged man. Also, the fact that this is going to have multiple characters from Batman's rogues also has me really hyped. because outside of the Clooney and Kilmer films, that's something that hasn't really been touched outside of the video games and comics. Black Adam and Shazam 2 are two more that I can't wait for. The first Shazam was fantastic, and the fact that they're going to start intertwining the Black Adam and Shazam movies is something that's extremely interesting to me. Plus, if Superman is going to show up anywhere in the DCEU, it'll likely be one of these movies, I think. Black Adam is another film that, while not crazy about at first, that literally every time I get new information, it just makes it that much more interesting to me. I've yet to hear something about this film that doesn't excite me. Plus, Dwayne Johnson seems very committed to this role. The JSA are about to be in a live-action movie, and it just really has the opportunity to be something incredibly different and great at the same time. The Suicide Squad is the one in DC's upcoming lineup that I think has the chance to be the biggest flop out of all the upcoming films. The first Suicide Squad wasn't great at all, but so far the second one looks fantastic. It looks like everything the first one should have been, and I think James Gunn was a stroke of genius since the first film was basically trying to be Guardians of the Galaxy in the first place. But I'm just a little worried that Gunn will go a little too far in some places, because Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is his biggest defender in this respect, in that there's a lot of elements that could have worked, but James took to dumb humour a little further than it should have been. Guardians 1 was the perfect blend of that, and if the Suicide Squad could manage that tone, I think I'll be very happy with it. The Snyder Cut of Justice League is also something that definitely could either be fantastic or end up leaving a lot of people unhappy. I'm excited for it for a lot of reasons, because basically it's another 3.5 hours of live action Justice League, and it's pretty hard to be angry about that. Marvel, on the other hand, is a lot different to talk about. Like Guardians of the Galaxy 3 definitely could be great, but after the second film, I just feel like I don't have the energy for these characters anymore. The fact that I like the Guardians more in Infinity War and Endgame than I did in their own sequel should speak volumes. But that said, the addition of Adam Warlock and the elements that Endgame left on the table could be enough to make this film all it needs to be. Black Panther 2 and Captain Marvel 2 are the two films I feel the most indifferent towards, I feel like, because I liked both of their first movies, for sure, but I didn't love them. I didn't think they were just passable films at all, but there were a lot of elements in both that I felt weren't as good as they needed to be. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of made me more excited for Captain Marvel 2 than I would have been otherwise, just because of the even slightest possibilities that S.H.I.E.L.D. could tie in or just Coulson could show up or something. Plus, it's all but confirmed that Sword will play a role in Captain Marvel's sequel, and that's at least a little exciting. Two that I am super hyped for is Thor Love and Thunder and Spider-Man 3, mainly because of their prior films being awesome. Thor 4 will be bringing back Jane Foster as the Mighty Thor, and could also be having Christian Bale in the villain role, so those are two things that have me very intrigued. Plus, Spider-Man Far From Home left the character on one of the best cliffhangers in the entire MCU, obviously not the snap level cliffhanger, but it was still pretty damn good, so I'm pretty hyped to see what they do with his character in his third movie. Now, even after 3 trailers, Black Widow still hasn't wowed me yet. It looks alright. The wait time because of COVID definitely hasn't helped either, but kicking off Phase 4 with a character who is already dead, and the movie is set in the timelines past, just isn't too interesting. I guess I'm excited to see Florence Pugh as the new Black Widow. I'm interested to see what David Harbour is like as Red Guardian. William Hurt is back as a young Ross, so that's interesting. And Taskmaster is one of Marvel's coolest villains to me, so hopefully the movie does him justice. But yeah, there's not a lot of elements here that have me crazy hyped for this. The Eternals and Shang-Chi have by far the biggest amount of chance to fail out of Marvel's upcoming lineup, just because of the general public having no idea who these characters are, and both having pretty much no prior setup in the MCU. I would say that the Eternals have me the most excited for any Marvel movie alongside Thor 4 and Spider-Man 3, just because of the sheer cast they have, the characters they'll be introducing, the likely tie-ins to Thanos and the Infinity Stones, the costumes, and a lot of elements have me very excited to see what they do here. It's kind of nice to be going into a Marvel film that's pretty unknown again. Now, in terms of Shang-Chi, I personally don't have a lot of interest in him. Most of my knowledge of his character comes from when he's paired with Iron Fist in the comics, and the prospect of a martial arts Marvel film does sound pretty awesome, and finally getting the Mandarin and 10 Rings plot sorted will be nice, but as a whole, I guess they just haven't teased enough or announced enough for me to care about this film just yet. Maybe when we get a trailer that'll change though. Now, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is one that has me very conflicted, because I didn't like the first Doctor Strange film at all. I thought it was one of the more just passable films in the entire MCU. I felt the character of Strange was written in a somewhat frustrating way, but then just like the Guardians, Infinity War really turned me around on him. The film started to showcase a lot of elements of the character in a way that his solo film completely failed to do for me, and all of a sudden I was intrigued in him again. But it's looking like behind the scenes, Doctor Strange 2 is being put in a place very similar to Iron Man 2, where the higher-ups just want the film to be the connecting tissue between a lot of different elements in Marvel. Now, at Comic-Con 2019, director Scott Derrickson made it clear that this was a traditional Doctor Strange film that also is Marvel's first full-on horror film. And since that announcement, we've heard of many different Marvel comic book characters that will be making their debut in this film. We've heard that both WandaVision and Loki, which are the Disney TV Plus shows, will be seriously connected to this film. And it also will be the introduction of the MCU Multiverse. Now, following a lot of these announcements, we found out that Scott actually departed the film as director due to not liking the direction that Marvel Studios was trying to take the film in. And then later on, Sam Raimi comes on board as the new director. Now, from the outside, this sounds pretty awesome. Tying it to the TV shows is something we've wanted for forever, and even though they're just the Disney Plus ones, this is still cool as hell. Plus, the introduction of the multiverse could be awesome. That's one of the coolest elements in any comic books. Even adding Sam Raimi as director has the chance to be great. But the fact that Scott departed, and the fact that this movie has very obviously changed directions from what it originally was, has me worried that the end product might not be as cohesive or as well made as it could have been. Now, there's next to no information on a lot of the rest, like Deadpool, Blade, Ant-Man and the Wasp 3, and then the Fantastic Four and X-Men stuff. Out of these, I think Blade could be one of the more interesting. I like the original Wesley Snipes trilogy, but it definitely is a product of the late 90s and early 2000s, so I think a modern take could be really cool. Plus, Mahershala Ali definitely has what I think could make this a memorable interpretation. Now, I'm kind of indifferent towards Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think Ant-Man 1 is great, but the sequel is one that I feel just gets a little bit more boring every time I watch it. I hope the third film is more like the first film. I don't really have an opinion on Deadpool yet, because I really have no idea what it'll be. Maybe it'll just be like the Fox ones, or maybe they'll go in a completely new direction. And finally, I'm very excited to see what they do with the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, but just like Deadpool, we have literally nothing to go on yet about those. So yeah, I personally think that at the moment, DC has the more exciting or interesting lineup, which is the first time in better part of a decade. But a lot of this is because we have so little information to go on for Marvel. But like I said, this is completely subjective, and everyone is going to feel different on this. So let me know what you think. What movies are you hyped for? Who do you think is going to have the better lineup? Who do you think is going to have the better films? Who are you more excited for? And please remember to like, share, subscribe so we can hit 500 and all of that. And I hope you have an amazing day.